Now we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson. Everybody, all of us, want to see Deshaun Watson get traded. Jack and I want to see him get traded to the Jets. Riv, I don't know what team you want to see him get traded to because your team cannot make any moves. You're an Eagles fan. But the Texans have
trade Wentz and picks in there.
The Texans have said that they are not going to trade Deshaun Watson, and basically they're hell bent on making it work with Deshaun Watson. And I believe it. Like, I don't think that Deshaun Watson he might not get traded, and I don't think he will when it's all said and done. And I said this last episode, but I didn't get to elaborate on it much. They own Watson until 2028. And own is a very strong word, but they literally do.
It's a CBA.
If Deshaun Watson decides to sit out the year, his contract is frozen, and they still have him for 5 more seasons. And they have Deshaun Watson locked up for 5 seasons, but they can also franchise tag him for 3 more years after that. So they basically own his rights until 2028. He would be fined $95,000 for missing training camp, and during the regular season, if he doesn't show up, he'd be fined a game check. So he wouldn't be getting paid, and even if Deshaun Watson retires, his contract would be frozen. And if he chose to unretire, he'd basically have to go back to being 5 years on that same deal.
Yo, wow.
And there are times in NFL history where this has happened, right? Gronk, when the Patriots were about to trade him to the Lions, Gronk said he was going to retire if he got traded to the Lions. Barry Sanders, when he retired, it was not because he wanted to stop playing. I read an article from 1999 that Sanders said that he'd return $5.4 million of his signing bonus to the Detroit Lions if they were to release him or trade him. And the Lions said no. So Barry Sanders never came back because of that. Calvin Johnson retired because he expressed he wanted out of Detroit.
Oh, for real?
Yes. And because they did not grant him a release or a trade, Calvin Johnson retired. So there's a trend we're seeing with the Detroit Lions and their dysfunction. Gronk was going to retire if he even went there. And then Carson Palmer, he had a holdout where he told the Bengals, if you don't trade me, I'm going to retire. And they ended up trading him to the Raiders. And Carson Palmer, the difference between him and this Deshaun Watson situation is that Carson Palmer, he had about $60 million saved up. When he held out, he said, I don't need football. I save my money. I can retire right now and be good for the rest of my life. Damn. So I don't care. The problem with Deshaun Watson is that he's still on his rookie deal. And are endorsements and sponsorships going to net him that money he would have got from just staying with the Texans? It's really a tricky situation. I'm not sure what he's going to do, but whatever Deshaun Watson decides to do, if he stays with the Texans, we'll see how that goes. But if he decides to hold out or retire for some reason, then we can see a shift in the NFL into becoming a players' league, and he can lead the movement because who knows what can happen. If Deshaun Watson decides to retire because they did not grant him a trade, there might be a strike, a league-wide strike, striking that that's not fair for the players because, yes, he signed the contract, but the teams have to honor that contract by surrounding him with help and letting him be involved in these decisions that they promised that he would be involved in. And because of that, we might see a whole domino effect happen where the league shifts to becoming a player league.
It happened in the NBA.
Hold on. So let me ask you a question. So if he retires, right, his contract is frozen, do they get that cap back or nah?
They get the cap back if that happens, yes.
Okay. So it just screws him.
Yes.
It also does screw the Texans, though, because if they're stubborn enough, right now, like the way I see it is it's like an old Western standoff. It's both of them with their guns pointed at each other, waiting for the first one to balk. And it's just a matter of who is going to stand down first. And you mentioned the Texans have all of the contractual power in this discussion. Like there's no way around it. If they want to, they can hold Deshaun Watson hostage for 8 seasons, pretty much the rest of his football prime. He's 25 years old. By the time he got out of that deal, he would be 33. And he's, obviously you could still be a great NFL quarterback at 33, but his best days would probably be behind him. But the question for the Texans becomes how much of a black eye is it if you do that to Deshaun Watson. Like, if you say to Deshaun Watson, you either show up day one or retire, we're not moving you, what big-time free agents are going to decline offers elsewhere to go to Houston? I especially after everything that's happened over the past year, starting with DeAndre Hopkins and now with the coaching search and the GM search.
J.J. Watt being gone.
Yeah, and J.J. Watt. I hope that maybe this J.J. Watt move, even though it made a lot of sense for them football-wise, I hope that this J.J. Watt move was their first move in saying, we understand the problems and we're going to start to try and move in the right direction, but I seriously question that it will. It makes, to me, they have to trade him because you only hurt yourself if you get to the regular season and Deshaun Watson decides to retire, because then you're left without a quarterback and you're left without anything in return for the quarterback you just lost. And your setback, you still have all the problems that you're dealing with right now. It's just you lose Deshaun Watson and you don't get any value back for him. And you get the reputation of the team that essentially, went into a staring match with a 25-year-old superstar quarterback. No one's going to want to go and play for you after that. After, how you treated one of the most highly regarded players in football. So for me, the Texans just have to look at it and say, how much do we value the way players are going to look at us moving forward? They already have a pretty bad black eye from this situation, I would say, but they can save face by working with Deshaun Watson to go and find a trade. I think the Houston Rockets are a good example in basketball. Although James Harden had the power, they worked with him. They sent him to a place that he wanted to be, and James Harden came out and spoke glowingly of them. He said, there's no problems between me and Houston. They helped me out. They got me to where I wanted to be, and now, I would have no second guesses about somebody going to Houston as a big-time free agent, but to me, it's about reputation, how much the Texans weigh that, and do I give them the benefit of the doubt on that? I'm not so sure that I do, and I personally don't think Deshaun Watson takes another snap in a Texans jersey. I think he either retires or he gets traded.
So you guys didn't answer the question. Hypothetically speaking, if he does get traded, where would you like to see him go?
I mean, I would like to see him go to the Jets, but I think the best team for him to go to is the 49ers. Yes, I think the 49ers are the best team for him.
Did you have like a trade idea in your mind?
It would just have to be a bunch of picks. I mean, it would have to be a haul. I don't know exactly what it would be, but to your point, talking about the Texans' reputation, I don't really think they care about their reputation. You look at Bob McNair, the former owner who bought the team. He said that you can't let the inmates run the prison, and that's what you can see how bad that sounds and how racial it sounds as well, and that's what ticked off Deshaun Watson. And I don't think that you see how it ticked out DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think that Deshaun Watson gets this trade granted because I think the Texans are going to try to prove a point that we're not going to let Deshaun Watson bully us. Like, he signed a contract. He should honor the contract, and because of that, we're not going to let him go where he wants, and we're not going to work with him. I think right now the Texans are becoming an extremely stubborn organization, but I don't want to just speak all negative about them, right? Because they did free up a lot of cap space by releasing J.J. Watt. They have $10 million in cap space. If they were to release David Johnson and Brandon Cooks, they would have $28 million in cap space. They get their picks back next season, the first and second rounders. This year they don't, but they still have 8 picks in this draft. They're just third rounders and, 4th, 5, 6, 7. So with that $28 million in cap space and those picks they'll get back next season, is it possible that the Texans can build a winner around Deshaun Watson? I think it is. But they're going to have to make a lot of moves in the offseason to try to sway Deshaun Watson out of him staying on that track of demanding a trade.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 things I would take out of that, out of everything you just said. One, from what we know of Deshaun Watson, and obviously none of us know him personally. We don't know what kind of guy he is, but from what we know, from what we know of him, he seems to be a pretty stand-up dude, and I wonder if the disrespect hasn't gone so far that he's done. It doesn't matter what they do. They could bring in Aaron Donald, bring DeAndre Hopkins back, whatever. I wonder if he's done playing for that organization because of the disrespect that they showed him this offseason. And two, I wonder if the decision makers, no matter what assets you give them, if they're in a position to make the right decisions. I mean, speaking as a Jet fan, we could see the Jets had a bunch of assets the past few years, and they haven't really made them work because they weren't great up front in the front office. And I wonder if Cal McNair and Jack Easterby make anything out of the assets that they build up for themselves, because they had some pretty decent assets prior to this past season. You know, they were a playoff team. They beat the Bills last year in the playoffs, and seemingly everything's been downhill since then. So I wonder if, you know, the dysfunction in the front office isn't too much to overcome, and two, if the disrespect to Deshaun Watson isn't too much to overcome at this point.
Well, that slave comment is ridiculous. Inmate comment.
Inmate.
It's ridiculous.
But I guess it can be the same thing because people argue prison is modern day slavery. So I guess, but
I could see why. But that's still like regardless, that's crazy. But just in case if he does get traded, I think I would like him in Denver. Denver, I feel like is a good spot. I think the Jets is cool too, but I think Denver with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant, he's promising. If they can keep Phillip Lindsay and they have Melvin Gordon, I think that's a good team for him. I think they have the pieces around him offensively for him to thrive there. So I would like him there. But, yeah, like you guys said, I think it just sounds like he wants to be involved in the moves that the front office makes. He wants to be involved in the coaching, the players they get. And I just don't think they're respecting him like that. So I hope he gets traded to a contender because he's a top 5 quarterback in this league. I hope he gets traded. I hope he gets out of there. That inmate, I don't know. I'm stuck on that.
But you're starting to see a little bit of a shift in the league. I can't remember personally an offseason like this as long as I've been watching football where you've seen not only a quarterback carousel, but even guys who haven't been moving, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, expressing their displeasure with their team. So I wonder if this is the first baby steps towards it becoming a players' league.
The players are starting to voice their opinions and concerns with how their teams are being run. The owners don't want that to happen. The front office doesn't want that to happen. And let's just say Deshaun Watson does retire. Everybody in the league, the players, everybody, fans, everybody is going to be pissed off. The media is going to be talking about it for forever. The Texans are going to get so much bad press, and it could start a league-wide strike where they're like, no, we want this to be a players' league. We want this to do that. It could start this whole shift in a movement within the NFL, and who knows if Deshaun's going to be the face of that or if he wants to be, because we saw Colin Kaepernick, when he became the face of a movement that's not like this, but that was different, he got blackballed. What happens to Deshaun Watson if he starts a movement like this? Yeah. We're not sure what can happen.
And I think that was leading to my question because, like, in the NBA, right, we saw LeBron be one of the first people to start the player empowerment, and LeBron's a big figure, not just in basketball, but in the entire world. So do you think Deshaun Watson is a big enough figure to start the trend of the player movement in the NFL?
I think that he's a big enough figure that he's going to have support from other figures. LeBron James is going to talk about it. 100%. Every NBA superstar is going to talk about it. Every NFL superstar is going to talk about it. This is going to be a big deal if it happens.
In my opinion, the only guy who would create bigger waves would be Patrick Mahomes. I think that Deshaun Watson, not only is he a 25-year-old superstar, arguably a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, but one thing I've said throughout the process is he's an incredibly well-liked guy. You would have a hard time finding any enemies of his around the league. You never hear a bad word said about him. He's humble. He's quiet in the media. He seemingly does no wrong. He's done everything well for that organization on the field and behind the scenes. So it's just a really, really bad look for the Texans. So there's no way that they could spin it. There's no way they can angle it to make it look like it's Deshaun Watson's fault. It's all the eyes are on them right now. It's their move. They hold the cards, but, do they really want to hold them? I don't think that that's the smart move.